It's Thursday, and that means it's time for another Throwback Thursday. Joining me today is none other than Lori Kent with the Local Lou podcast.
You know, I am immediately sad that we do not have a replica of the building that we're going to talk about made out of toothpicks.
I know. Well, we could do that. We talked about meeting up, get some coffee. Let's do it.
We could, but I feel like it's not going to look the same.
Oh, yeah. It's not gonna. It's like me doing a gingerbread house. It's not as good as you picture it.
I'm not going to lie. I literally won like a prize for doing a gingerbread house once, but I think they thought children did it. So I'm pretty
sure. You were in the children's category?
I'm pretty sure. It was just like, thank you.
Oh, well, at least you can say you won that.
Yeah, no,
I've never won that.
Yeah, I took the prize. I mean, but yeah, so I wanted to talk today about the Tuthill Lumber Company, and there's this cool historic easement plaque which talks about how we have decided to keep the front facade of this building historically accurate, but actually this entire building is basically what it looks like now is what it looked like when it was built, which is just fantastic. And again, we're just so lucky to have buildings like this in Sioux Falls. But specifically, this was Tuthill Lumber. It's now DeWitt Designs and has been for a while, but Tuthill Lumber, of course, it starts here. It's a lumber company, and you know, but that in and of itself is pretty interesting because we're a treeless prairie, so how are we selling lumber? And so this is located on 8th Street, and it's south of the Illinois Central Depot, which we've talked about before. Yeah. And since it's right by that depot, it means it's right on those railroad tracks. So that's how we're gonna get the lumber here. That's how we're gonna get it all over our state and get these towns built with lumber. Of course, we're sitting on this huge deposit of Sioux quartzite, and you would think, oh, that's gonna be way cheaper, except for you have to extract it, you have to ship it. So it's just as complicated. And definitely selling lumber they were kind of ahead of the curve because that's definitely what things were gonna be built out of. So let's get to know John Tuthill, the guy who starts this company, because if you live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota today, you probably know a thing or two named Tuthill.
Yep.
So let's get to know the guy that starts the whole thing. John Tuthill is born in 1846 in New York, but he spends most of his life in Iowa and then in South Dakota. And he actually, in his 20s, he's in Clinton, Iowa, and he gets married, he has a family, and at the age of 23, he starts his first company, a lumber company, which totally makes me feel like a slacker because I don't own a company.
Yeah.
But at 23, he's just out there owning companies, having a family. And so then he actually starts a lumber mill. I think that's in the Des Moines area. In 1882 is when he ends up here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which, you know, that's like the beginning of us being a little city. And so he is here to seize that day. He sees this opportunity. He understands, like, I could really make a name for myself here, but you know, he doesn't exactly have the funds to do it on his own. So when he shows up, he teams up with a man with the last name King, and so King and Tuthill buy out another existing lumber company to build their lumber company, which works for a couple years, but then King passes away. And so Tuthill kind of has this situation, like, what are we gonna do? He gets a brother of his to move out here. His brother and him buy up the shares of the rest of the company to start Tuthill Lumber. And this is obviously a success, so much so that they build this beautiful building in the 1890s. In fact, the business is going so well, they have lumber yards all over Dakota Territory. He has lumber yards in 3 different states. I mean, they're all dotted along the railroad tracks. These new little towns are popping up, and they're all being built by Tuthill Lumber. And so this building in downtown Sioux Falls off 8th Street, it gets expanded in 1913 because business is going so well. And John Tuthill ends up passing away in 1922. And when he does, he's one of the biggest businessmen in Sioux Falls. He lived here for more than half his life, like 40 years, and he wasn't just building a lumber company. He was building Sioux Falls too. You look at his obituary, he was part of the founding of the Sioux Falls National Bank. He helped us get our first water treatment plant, which is pretty important.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. I like fresh
Yeah.
water. It's good stuff.
Wow.
He helps. He's on the board of the library for years. He actually donates a ton of his own books to the library. And there's a story in his obituary talking about people that would go to the library and see him reading the books that he donated, which just distilled my heart.
Oh, that is so heartwarming.
Yeah, what a sweet heart. And he also has several children that are going to carry on this Tuthill name. They're going to carry on this company for a while, and they're going to build their own legacies here in Sioux Falls. And again, there's other things named after him that maybe we'll have to go into at some time. But this building is a great place to start because it's where it starts. Yeah. It's that lumber company that starts it all for Tuthill and in Sioux Falls. And it's right off 8th Street. It's beautiful. It's, again, you take a picture of 100 years ago and compare it to today. Overlap, it looks almost exactly the same, except for now there's a DeWitt design sign on it. That's kind of about it. So
wow, so
it's
cool.
beautiful.
So cool to see people like in their hands and making Sioux Falls, Sioux Falls.
Absolutely,
so cool.
yeah, and it just makes me feel like I'm not doing enough.
You are, your impact, you're giving us the history of Sioux Falls, and we love that.
If I get my hands on enough toothpicks,
you'll make change.
I will.
There you go.
Make a difference.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Lori.
You.
Always a pleasure. Stick around, we have more after the break.